Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors.
Mr. Demirjian, question. Good morning, Mr. Tiape.
It's a good start in this today's hearing. Well, please.
I promise it wasn't me.
No, yeah.
D'accord. On recommence. Bonjour.
Mr. Demirjian, let's start again. Good morning, sir. Answer, good morning. Question, I'd like to begin by asking you for some clarifications of your responses yesterday. Now, yesterday, we looked at some messages from the gendarmerie, and under the heading Info, sometimes the chief of the armed forces and others were included. But for other messages, those people or institutions were not mentioned under the heading Info. What were the criteria used to decide? Answer, it would depend on the importance of the topic dealt with in the message. Question, very well. If I could move on to something else. Now, yesterday, and I make reference to page 112 of yesterday's transcript, and I'll quote, just to be perfectly clear. So you said that the police, when they conduct their investigations, did the gendarmes remain under your responsibility as Supreme Commander? And your answer, you said, I quote, when they were assigned to the police, they obeyed the orders of the police commissioner at the location, and once their mission was over, they would come back. That was your very words. Could you clarify how many of your men were assigned to the secos? What happened at the time when the gendarmes were working at the secos? Answer, the secos was a separate unit, and it did not form part of the gendarmerie. However, the center, the secos, worked with the gendarmes, the police, and the soldiers. So the gendarmes who were sent to the secos were deemed to be assigned to the secos. Their duties were there. Question, very well. I'll just wait for the interpretation to catch up. So yesterday, if you remember, I believe we were talking about the end of October and the efforts to ensure security during the first round of election. Who was the commander of the secos at that point in time? Answer, the commander of the secos was General Gbagbo, Divisional General Gbagbo. Question, and did this gentleman have other responsibilities? Answer, yes. He was also the commander of the Abidjan Gendarmerie Academy. Question, now this police academy, obviously it would have formed part of the gendarmerie. Answer, yes. Question, very well. Now, so we have an individual here who is the commander of the secos and the commander of the gendarmerie academy. Could you explain to us whom he reported to for each one of these duties? Question, answer. As the head of the academy, as the head of the commander, as the commander of the Gendarmerie Academy located in Abidjan, he reported to the superior commander of the National Gendarmerie. In terms of his responsibilities as the commander of the secos, according to what I learned, I did not receive anything in writing, but apparently he reported to the chief of staff of the armed forces. Then after that, in turn, the Minister of Defense. So he reported to two people, to the head of the gendarmerie, and then through the chief of staff, armed forces, to the Minister of Defense.
Bien sûr, Monsieur le Président.
The witness, of course, Your Honor.
Clear if you said to the reports to me as head of the gendarmerie, and so just for the record, it would be clear. Thank you.
Et lorsque vous avez dit que vous...
Mr. Demirjian, question. Now, you said that you learned that this man reported to the chief of staff, armed forces, and later to the Minister of Defense. How did you learn this? Answer. I was told this during a meeting that was held at the Army headquarters. Question. And this meeting, when was it held? Answer. During our regular meetings, but I can't remember the exact date. Question. Now, you don't need to give us a specific date, but can you give us a general idea? Was it before the election, during the election period, or what year? Answer. Well after the election.
ce sujet, vous avez...
Question, one last clarification. You said that later it was the Minister of Defense. He was the person to whom the general reported. When you say later, could you be more specific? Answer. Perhaps I'm exaggerating when I say later, but it was the chief of staff, and I asked him in terms of Sekos, who was the superior of the commander at the Sekos, and he told me that it was the Minister of Defense, and we left it at that. Interpreter correction, the previous reply, the witness said, well before the election. Well before the election. Question, so during the election, who did this man report to, just so that we can be crystal clear? Answer, since the chief of staff was responsible for planning operations, the Sekos commander also, well, this being a unit that was engaged in operations, thus he reported to the chief of staff, armed forces. Question. Very well. Otherwise, if we could return to the Gendarmerie Academy and the students there and the groups, the various years, their later assignments, if we could explore that area. Answer. All of that came under the responsibility of the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie in his capacity as commander of the school.
And therefore, under the capacity of whom? Making the name. Under which responsibility? Under responsibility of whom?
The witness. I haven't quite understood the question.
And I quote in English, of course, all of that came under the responsibility of the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie in his capacity as commander of the school. And I ask, who is this person?
Le commandant.
The witness, the commander of the gendarmerie was General Kassarate, who is here right now.
Of yourself.
Can I have a moment? Sorry.
I just wanted to explain that it is easier for us in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years to read and to understand what is written, because now we do know, but maybe in 1 year we think, who was it? You know, it's easier if you put the name. Okay, thank you very much.
May we continue, Mr. Van? Yeah.
Mr. Demirjian question. Very well, Mr. Witness. I'd now like to move on to something else. Before the election, what did you know about the militias, the mercenaries who were active within Côte d'Ivoire? Answer. Côte d'Ivoire experienced its first crisis in 2002, and on each side there were mercenaries, both within the new forces, les forces nouvelles, and also in the south, because you see in the west there had been many attacks and local leaders formed militia groups to defend their areas. That was the case of Mao Groffier, who was part of the group.
Très bien.
Question. Very well. Mao Groffier, do you remember the name of his group? Answer, I no longer recall, Mr. Prosecutor. Question, very well. Let's be a bit more general. What groups did you hear about? Answer, there were several groups. The FLGO, FLGO, the MPGO, MPIGO, the MGP, MJP, etc., and so on and so forth. Question. Did you know whether the people who belonged to these groups were all Ivoirian nationals? Answer, I couldn't tell you. But according to the information that we had at hand, a good number of them came from neighboring countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone. I'm being cautious in my words. I don't have the actual information right at hand. Question. Did you ever hear mention made of a group referred to as the GPP? Answer, yes. Question. And who were these people, to the best of your knowledge, the GPP? Answer, it was a group of young patriots. Question. Now, you told us a few moments ago that Mao Groffier, group was to the west, and were they active there? Answer, they were young people based in Abidjan, to the best of my knowledge. Question, very well. Now, you have told us that to the best of your knowledge, they were young patriots. This group, the GPP, to your knowledge, during which period of time were they in existence? As of which date? Answer: I don't know the exact date. I knew that they did exist, that the group did exist. Question: very well. And did you know who the leader was, or the leaders of the GPP? Answer: I knew some names, but I can't quite recall at this particular moment. Answer: very well. Now, you gave us a few names when a statement was taken from you. Could I put a few names to you to refresh your memory? Just a moment.
Alors, pour mes confrères,
Mr. Demirdjian, CIVOTP 00160256, page 271, page 271. And you mentioned Mr. Boiseau, someone by the name of Boiseau. Does that ring a bell? Answer: yes. Question: did you know very much about this man by the name of Boiseau? Answer: that is the name that was given to me. Apparently he was the leader of the GPP. Question: during which period of time? Answer: I'm sorry, I do have trouble with dates, but the group did exist. He did exist. Question: and during the 2010 election and the post-election crisis. Now, first of all, did you know whether the GPP was still based in Abidjan? Answer: we did not have direct contact with the GPP. Question: please go ahead. Answer: so I really couldn't tell you whether they were still in Abidjan, but what I do know is that when I learned about it, then I knew that they were in Abidjan. It was a group of young people from Abidjan. Question: now, you just said when you learned about this that you knew that they were in Abidjan. I know that you have trouble with dates, but the general period of time would help us a great deal. When did you find out that they were in Abidjan? Answer: in the run-up to the elections and during the election period itself. Question: very well. And going by what you learned or heard about, was this group armed? Did they have weapons? Answer: no. Question: during never? No period of time? Answer: no. Question: if you would just give me a moment, please. Mr. Demirdjian, very well. I will return to this topic later. Just one last clarification. Do you know what district of Abidjan these people were based in? I'm talking about the period before the election and then during the election, those times? Answer, no. But they were young people in Abidjan, in all the neighborhoods, and they would gather from time to time. Question, very well. Let us backtrack. Yesterday we were talking about efforts to ensure safety during the first round of voting. And we heard evidence about the outcome of the first round of voting, and the various parties have come to an agreement on a number of facts to the effect that on the 7th of November 2010, the former president, Mr. Bédier, announced that he was supporting Alassane Ouattara for the second round of voting. I would imagine you were aware of that? Answer, yes. Question, very well. Now, during this period of time, let us now go to the month of November. You were still the superior, or rather the supreme commander of the National Gendarmerie, weren't you? Answer, yes. Question, yesterday you told us that your office was in the Plateau area. Were you still based there in Le Plateau in November 2010? Answer, yes. Question, Mr. Witness, at that time, November 2010, where were you living? Answer, I was living in Agban, in the gendarmerie camp established there. Question, and from Agban, would you go to work every day in Le Plateau? Answer, yes. Question, at Agban camp, did you have your own offices as well? Answer, no. Question, were there other people living at the camp, Camp Agbo? Answer, it was a large group, a large barracks, so there were a great many gendarmes who were there. And there were also primary schools in the camp, Camp Agban. Question, so there were primary schools there. Does that mean there were civilians living there too? Answer, they didn't live there. The teachers came from town to teach the students in Agban. They also came from outside Agban for primary education there in Agban. The school belonged to the Ministry of Education. Question, very well. Could you tell us which units were based at the Agban Gendarmerie camp? Answer, we had the 1st Squadron. We had the armored squadron group from the National Gendarmerie. We had the intervention unit of the National Gendarmerie. We also had the VIP protection squadron. We also had a company of people from the gendarmerie with a brigade dealing with basically law enforcement, traffic gendarmes. Question, very well. Now, other than you, were there other gendarmerie officers living in Camp Agban? Answer, all the officers who were commanding units that I mentioned lived there in Agban. Question, now your Deputy Commander General Afro, did he live there? Answer yes. Question, was his office also in Le Plateau? Answer yes. Question, when you used to go from Camp Agban to Le Plateau, who would drive you? Answer, a gendarme. Question, was it always the same one? Did you have a specific driver or did that change? Answer, it was the same driver. Question, now, if you had a working session in Le Plateau, would you be alone, all by yourself in the car, or would you have other people with you? Answer, I would go in my official vehicle with two other vehicles, one in front, one below. Correction, one in front, one behind. Question, could you describe your dealings with Mr. Afro, your deputy? What was your relationship like with him? Answer, we were practically from the same year. We have known each other ever since the time we were both lieutenants. Question, now, at one point in time, did you have any problems with him or did you get along well? Answer, we got along well. We had no problems with him. Answer, we were practically from the same year. We have known each other ever since the time we... Question, very well. I apologize. Perhaps you told us this yesterday, but what has become of him? What is he doing now? Is he retired? Answer, yes. Question, very well. Now, President Bidji made his announcement on the 7th, and then the next day, do you remember a working session with your units and the other people that you worked with, the unit commanders? Do you remember that?
Answer, I no longer remember. Question, very well. And during that pre-electoral period, in fact, before the second round of the elections in November, did you continue working regularly? Did you have your working sessions and meetings? Answer, yes. Question, very well. I would like to show you another document from the Gendarmerie. It is 0043-0417, and it is number 94 on our list.
Très bien. Si on peut agrandir.
Very well. If we can zoom in a little bit, please. That's fine. Mr. Witness, this is another document that we found in the archives, specifically in the communications center in the Akban camp from CSG, that is Supreme Commander of the Gendarmerie. Then you have the recipients, and then for information, the Ministry of Defense, SEMA, and the Chief of Personal Military Staff, and then urgent number. So there is number 32163 CSGCAB. Yesterday you said CAB refers to cabinet. Is that correct? Answer, yes. Question, it is dated the 8th of November and the subject is discussion on the security situation. And in paragraph 1, it is stated that this meeting has to take place the next day, that is Tuesday, the 9th of November. That is in the conference room of the gendarmerie camp in Akban. So was there a conference room in Akban gendarmerie camp? Answer, yes. Question, very well. That is all I have for this document, but what I would like to ask you is this. During that period, that is the 8th, 9th November, towards the second round of the elections, what was the main activity of the gendarmerie in Abidjan? Answer, as usual, we were providing security for persons and property. Question, very well. I can see here that one of the recipients is the commander of the Gendarmerie Academy, that is General Gay Prt1. You mentioned him a short while ago. Did he regularly attend meetings when he was convened? Answer, no. Question, why? Can you elaborate? Answer, he had two principal duties. If he was unavoidably absent because of his SECOS responsibilities, then he would have himself represented by a deputy in the meetings. Question, did he sometimes not attend at all and then not send anybody to represent him? Answer, I no longer remember. Question, one last clarification. Next to the commander of the gendarmerie school, you have all co-legions. What is a co-legion? Answer, a co-legion is a legion commander. So all co-legions are all legion commanders who are invited to the meeting. Question, so sometimes for commander you use the abbreviation CDT, but in this case it is CO. Answer, yes. Question, very well. A few days later, on the 14th of November, we received evidence of the adoption of a decree requisitioning the National Armed Forces. That is a decree of the 14th of November. Do you remember that decree? Answer, no. Question, did you become aware of the existence of a decree on the requisition of the National Armed Forces in mid-November 2010? Answer, no. Question, during the electoral period, did you at any point learn that the National Armed Forces had been requisitioned? Answer, as I have explained to you before, the Chief of Army Staff had as duty to plan security operations. So he invited us to meetings, or he sent messages assigning people to specific missions and at specific locations and times. Question, as far as you can remember, during your career within the FDS and particularly the gendarmerie, did you ever learn about a situation during which the National Armed Forces were requisitioned? Answer, I no longer remember. Question. Mr. Witness, requisitioning a national armed force. What does that mean? What is requisitioning? Answer. Requisition is an administrative measure which makes it possible for the armed forces to become involved in restoring law and order, which is not normally their duty. So in order to do this, you need a requisition. Question. And so when the national armed forces are requisitioned, what impact might this have on the work of the National Gendarmerie? Answer. Zero impact.
Juste un petit instant, s'il vous plaît.
Question, just a moment, please.
Monsieur le témoin, vous venez de...
Question. Mr. Witness, you have said that a requisition is not a usual mission. So what types of situation would give rise to the requisition of the National Armed Forces? Answer. In the case of a serious incident, the armed forces can be requisitioned to assist the first and second category forces, namely the police and the gendarmerie. Question. Just to be clear, you worked with the gendarmerie within the FDS. What would be an example of a serious situation or incident? Answer. Let me be very clear. I have never experienced any situation of requisition of armed forces in Côte d'Ivoire. Question. Very well. Let me try to refresh your memory with a document which is 0018-0047. Number 36 on our list.
Alors ici devant...
You can see in front of you the official gazette of Côte d'Ivoire, Thursday 9th of December. And let us turn over to the next page, please.
Merci. Pouvez-vous...
Thank you. Can you zoom into the bottom half of the document? And specifically to the right, please. A little bit more towards the right. Thank you. That is perfect. No, not that much. Very well. Mr. Witness, you have in front of you a decree number 2010-306 of the 14th of November 2010, requisitioning the National Armed Forces of Côte d'Ivoire. It begins with the President of the Republic, mindful of the Constitution, mindful of a certain number of laws, which includes a document on the creation of the Integrated Command Center And the last operative, or rather the last point is mindful of the urgency. And then it is said that national armed forces are requisitioned and deployed throughout the entire national territory. That is why I asked you whether there was an impact on the work of the gendarmerie when it comes to requisition, because there is talk here about deployment throughout the national territory. So would the deployment of the national armed forces have an impact on the work of the gendarmerie? Answer. As I told you yesterday, I was not a recipient of the official gazette. Secondly, ever since 2002, when the first crisis broke out, the army has always been in the field practically all the time to provide security alongside the first and second category forces. So I believe this decree was simply issued to regularize the situation. Question, very well. Just to see the date, let's move to the next page, top left-hand corner.
D'accord, nous voyons que c'est écrit.
We can see dawn at Abidjan on the 14th of November 2010, Laurent Gbagbo. Now, you have said, are you saying that you were never aware of this text? Answer, no.
Let me just make a comment. But one cannot say, a citizen cannot say that he is not the recipient of the Gazzetta, of the official Gazette. You are per definitionem, recipient of it. And I recall one thing, that you have to say the truth. Because if you are not the recipient of the Gazette, you don't know the law, what is in place in Côte d'Ivoire. And this, for the commander of the gendarmerie, would be maybe not the best thing.
Peut-être pour continuer un petit peu.
The prosecutor, as a follow-up to the presiding judge's question, you said that you did not receive the official gazette. Now, if a decree was published in the official gazette and it had an impact on the FDS, was there any other way that you would receive such information? Answer, let me repeat once again that I never received the official gazette. On the other hand, the general staff of the army sent us messages about the deployment of our forces as well as the other FDS forces, including the water resources and forestry departments, as well as the Navy.
Monsieur le témoin.
Question, Mr. Witness, during that period in November, that is between the two rounds of the elections, Do you remember having visited the presidential residence? Answer, yes. Question, very well. To begin with, why did you go to the presidential residence? Answer, I would go there after being summoned by the head of state. And then in the residence, apart from the head of state, there are other authorities there that you can go and visit. Question, and when you went to the residence, you have just told us that you could go to meet with other authorities. As far as you can remember, when you went to the residence, who did you meet with? Answer, I could meet with the head of cabinet of the head of state who lived there now, Mr. Nassis. I could consult the doctor for health issues. I could even go to greet friends who were working at the residence. Question, very well. And when you went to the presidential residence, you said, if summoned. Is that correct? Answer, yes. Question, now, during the period from early November up until the end of the conflict, the 11th of April 2011, can you give us an approximate idea of the number of times you went to the residence to meet with the head of state? Answer, I cannot recall, but I went there as often as I was needed there for the reasons that I have mentioned. Question, did you have any of the gendarmerie officers or elements assigned to the presidential residence? Answer, yes. Question, and when they were at the residence, what were their duties? Answer, there is the security group of the President of the Republic, and those gendarmes were members of this group, and the commander of that group himself was a gendarme named Colonel Auna, who is now deceased. Question, very well. So once they were assigned to the presidential residence, did they remain under your responsibility or authority? Answer, no. Question, under whose responsibility would they be? Answer, they would be under the authority of the commander of the Presidential Security Group, Colonel Auma. Question, and who was his superior? Answer, his own superior was the Chief of Personal Military Staff, General Tuvuli. Question, now talking about the gendarmes who were at the residence, did they maintain communication with you? Would they report some information to you? Answer, practically no, because they were carrying out their daily duties. Question, what do you mean by practically? Answer, what I mean is that they are not under my direct command, so they are not answerable to me unless in exceptional cases.
Donc là, vous parlez de communication.
Question. So you are talking about formal communications. Did you have informal communications with the gendarmes posted at the presidential residence? Answer. I must have expressed myself poorly. When I was passing and entering the residence, the gendarmes would salute me. As usual, I will tell them good morning and so on and so forth, the usual greetings.
D'accord.
Question. Very well. The gendarmes who were assigned to the presidential residence, did they report any information to you, whether formally or informally? And I'm talking about their work at the presidential residence. Answer, no. Question. Mr. Witness, let me refresh your memory with an answer that you gave us during your interview in 2011. It is 00160315, and it begins from line 548. And this is the answer that you gave. I will quote as from there. There is a large number of gendarmes in the presidential security. So as their leader, when they saw an authority arriving, it was a duty for them to inform me that there was a meeting. We saw such and such a person. We did not see you. Maybe I was not called, so I was informed. When people arrived, they informed me as their leader. So, unquote. So that is what you said during your interview in 2011. So can you clarify this statement of yours in 2011? Answer. The gendarmes who were at the residence did not report to me on a daily basis about their activities. Their commander, Colonel Auma, could inform me as the commander of the gendarmerie that we had a meeting with such and such a person, but it was not on a daily basis. Question. What you said in 2011, was that the truth? Answer. That is what I have stated again. Question. Very well. When you were summoned to the presidential residence a short while ago, I believe you said that it was the head of state who would summon you. Was that the only person who could convene you to a meeting in the presidential residence? Answer. The word summon may be a bit exaggerated, but we were invited to attend one meeting or the other. Question. And when you went to the presidential residence, did you go there alone or were you accompanied by others? Answer. all the meetings to which I was invited, we attended together under the leadership of the Army Chief of Staff. Question, you use the word invited. Now, when you are invited to attend such a meeting, did you have the possibility of turning down an invitation? Answer, that would not be possible, no. Question, very well. Mr. Witness, I would like to show you, just a minute. When you arrived the presidential residence, was there any specific procedure to gain access to the interior of the residence? Answer, when we are invited, we leave our guard unit outside and then we enter without a problem. Question. Very well. Your guards or yourself, when you arrive the presidency, do you announce your presence in any way? Answer. When we are invited, we are expected at the specific hour indicated. And so when we arrive, it is for that specific invitation. Question, very well. And do you know whether your arrival or presence is noted down in any way? Answer, in all guard posts, there is always a log book that indicates such and such a person came in at this time and went out at this time. This is a usual military practice. Question, very well. I will show you now a logbook or a book. It is CIVOTP 00880863. And it is number 262 on our list. This is a visitor's book that we found at the presidential residence.
Très bien. Et pouvons-nous...
Very well. Can we go to the page ending 0930, please?
En fait,
Mr. Witness, in fact, I would like to show you another page which was transcribed. The original is on the preceding page, that is 0929.
Could we zoom in, please?
voilà.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Witness, in order to make it easier to read the document, this handwritten document, the document was transcribed electronically, but what you can see before you is the original scanned or copy, photocopied. And so, to make things easier, let us go to the next page to read the transcribed version. Can we then go to the next page, please?
Et si on...
Thank you. Can we zoom in to the top of the page to begin with? Thank you. Here we see service, Friday, 19 November 2010, Chief of Post, and so on and so forth. And then we have, in order, number of entries. You see the number, name of person, and the next column is pers d, and then time of arrival, time of departure. Now let's scroll down the document, please. Thank you. I draw your attention to number 12, 13, and 14. Can you tell us? Well, you have already mentioned those names. Kassarate, Prt1, and Mangu. Now, in principle, when you went to the residence, you said a short while ago that from time to time you went there with the Chief of General Staff, Mr. General Mangu. Is that correct? Answer, yes. Question. Very well. Next to those names, we see the abbreviation PR. We know from evidence what PR represents, but can you please remind us what that stands for?
What?
Yeah, I just don't want to skip this part of the testimony
Okay.
of ours, and he's giving an answer. Alors, oui, monsieur le témoin, vous avez dit
Yes, witness, what did you say? Did you say PR? What does PR stand for? Answer, President of the Republic. We see time of arrival, and we see that all three persons left at the same time at 15:10. On the 19th of November, that was during the second round of elections. Can you tell us what the purpose of that visit was and what you talked about during the visit? Answer. When it comes to discussing matters of security, all the generals would go there under the leadership of General Mangu. But as you have it here, I arrived at the control post and I went to the residence, and no one ever asked me who I was going to see. Question. So you said security program, and that when you had a meeting with the President of the Republic, what did you discuss in relation to the security program? Answer. The Chief of General Staff reports on our behalf to the head of state on the security situation in the country. Question. Once he has reported on the security situation in the country, what then happens thereafter? Answer. The President, being the Supreme Commander of the Army, then orders us to continue to provide security for the people and their property. Question. Very well. Let us now move on briefly to something else. In mid-November, in fact on the same day, 19th November, were you aware that clashes had occurred between members of the FESHI and militants of the RHDP in Kokodi? Answer. No, I don't remember. Question. Very well. During that period between the two rounds, do you remember whether the gendarmerie received any requests from any political parties asking for protection either of their people, their property, or their buildings? Answer. To be specific, no. But as a matter of general principle, in Côte d'Ivoire, whenever there is a demonstration, irrespective of its authors or organizers, requests are made to the armed forces or to the gendarmerie or the police to provide safety and security at the location of such a rally or demonstration. Question, very well. Apart from rallies where the gendarmerie or police ever invited to protect the premises of any political parties? And so I have no such recollection. Question, very well. Now, maybe to help you and to jog your memory, let me show you a letter, CIV OTP 0044 0060, which would be number 152 on our list.
Je vous remercie. Oui, on peut agrandir la partie supérieure.
Could we zoom in to the top part of the document? Thank you. At the very top letterhead, we have RHDP, and the date appears to be Abidjan, Friday, 19th November 2010. To the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie. Now, I would like to give you a little time to read through the letter as we scroll down so that the general can read through that letter, the purpose of which is, or the subject is, request for troops of the National Gendarmerie to provide security for the RHDP house. So I'll give you a moment, and please let me know when you're done reading. Answer, I'm done. Question, before we delve into any details, you see at the top left of the document a stamp and a date and a figure. Do you recognize that stamp for incoming mail? Answer, yes. Question, it would appear that the letter came in 3 days later, that's on the 22nd of November, whereas it is dated on the 19th of November. First of all, do you remember having received this letter, or were you informed that this letter was received at the Supreme Command Office of the National Gendarmerie? Answer, I don't have a clear, exact recollection. However, this is consonant with the possibility of an organization requesting assistance from the gendarmerie, and it is in fact their duty to do so. Question, very well. So such an application would not be abnormal. Answer, that is correct. Question, let us scroll down, further down to the document, into the document. We can stop there, yes. Now we see the author, National Campaign Director, RHDP, and the request is to provide security for the RHDP house in Kokodi at the headquarters of the PDCI-RDA throughout the period of the electoral campaign and the voting for the second round of the presidential elections. Now, question, do you remember whether or not the gendarmerie granted this request? Answer, it is their duty to do so. Question, now let us scroll up again to the top of the page.
No, the question was, if they did, not if it's the duty, of course it's a duty, but if they did protect, if there was a concrete follow-up on this, don't answer always in general terms. The questions are When they are specific, they need a specific answer. Thank you.
Allez-y, est-ce que vous avez une réponse précise, spécifique?
Question. Witness, do you have a specific answer? Answer, yes. The gendarmerie carried out that mission to provide security for the RHDP house. Question. Now, I want to ask you about the middle of the page. We see a handwritten minute, CAB. Is that something you are familiar with? Answer, yes. CAB is the cabinet. Question. Of the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie? Answer, yes. Question, very well. Now, I would like us to call up on the screen document 00440059.
Si on peut agrandir.
Please zoom in. Thank you. Mr. Witness, what we have here now is a document from the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie to the National Director of the RHDP campaign. And at the top of the page, you see the date 22 November 2010. I want to recall that on the previous document, it was received on the 22nd of November. That is the same day as here. Now, subject, request for security assistance, reference, your mail of 19 November, and please let us scroll down and allow the general a little time to read through the document. Please let's scroll down so that the witness can read through the document, starting with the word maître. Please zoom in again for the benefit of the witness, and then scroll down. Thank you.
Bien. Et donc, est-ce que tout d'abord cela...
Question. Does this remind you of the events and the position of the gendarmerie at the time? Answer, yes. Question, very well. Can we go to the very bottom of the page, please? Can we scroll down to the very bottom of the page, please? Is that your signature, Mr. Witness? We can zoom in further if that would help. Answer. That doesn't appear to be my signature.
Lorsque je vous demande si...
Question. When I ask you whether, after reading the letter, you were reminded of the events, you said yes. What does it remind you of? Answer. This was an application for assistance from the RHDP. The police was in the first rank of respondents. That is why the cabinet replied saying that they could, but that the first respondents would be the police, and that subsequently we might reinforce them as need arose, if at all. Question. Now, to wrap up, what is the problem with the signature, which makes you say that this is not your signature? Answer. This is not my signature, but I agree that the text tallies with our general ethics.
Donc tout à l'heure, en réponse à...
Question. A short while ago, when you answered the President's question, you said that the request was granted. And now we see the letter. Can you explain to us somewhat the answer that you provided a short while ago? Answer. Over time, I might have forgotten the specifics, but I can confirm that this was a letter, and I am certain that the gendarmerie must have sent troops to assist the police in providing security at the party house. Question. So as reinforcements? Answer. As reinforcements.
Très bien.
Question. Very well. Mr. Witness, there is a document about which I seek your help as we move to another topic relating to providing security during the election period. Let us please look at 00440076. Number 157 on our list.
Très bien. Alors, comme nous l'avons vu hier,
Thank you. Mr. Witness, yesterday we saw a message at the top of the page, and then from Supreme Commander of the Gendarmerie to Commander, 1st Departmental Legion, Mobile Legion, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th Legions. Now, what do the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th Legions represent? Answer. The 1st Legion of the National Gendarmerie is in Abidjan. The 1st Legion of the Mobile Gendarmerie is in Abidjan. The 3rd Legion is in Yamoussoukro. It's delocalized in Yamoussoukro. It used to be in Bouaké before the events. The 5th Legion is in San Pedro in the southwest of Côte d'Ivoire. And the 2nd Legion is in Daloa. Question. Thank you. Now, you see the subject, providing security for the second round of presidential elections. Just before that, reference, message unclassified, urgent with the attendant reference, which again appears to be the CCI. The message of 14th November from the CCI. In practice, did you usually provide such references and implement messages from the CCI? Answer, yes. Given that the CCI was the structure created to coordinate the activities of the FDS, the armed forces, the new forces, and all various units that were in Côte d'Ivoire at the time, within the context of the mission to provide security for the electoral process. Question. Very well. Now, below that, we see the word text, and then there is mission. In the subject reference, request to designate staff, 2,550 troops to be distributed as follows. Number 1, 1st Departmental Legion and 1st Mobile Legion, staff 630 troops. This document is 15 pages long. I will just scroll to the 2nd page to show you the format of the document. Please, let's go to page 2.
on peut agrandir un tout petit peu, s'il vous plaît.
Can we zoom in, please? Maybe less. Zoom out, please. Thank you. Now, Mr. Witness, on the next 14 pages of this document, we have tables similar to this one. And here, to the left, we see the first entry, PC Abidjan, 115 elements, and then you see it's broken down into Abidjan 1, Abidjan 2, and so on and so forth, up to Abidjan 6 further down. So from Abidjan 1 to Abidjan 6, what does that represent? Answer: this document was issued by the CCI. So you see, company mixed, a joint company to provide security for elections. So these were joint figures produced in relation to our troops. Question: very well. So for each town or each subsection, you have totals of 15, 25, 25, and so on and so forth. Is that in relation to the contribution of those troops from the gendarmerie? Answer: to be specific, that is the request from the CCI, which we forward to our troops. Question: very well. Let us return to the first page, please. And on that page, or rather, you have said that these are requests from the CCI, which you have forwarded to your troops. Now, in the text itself, this is what we read. You are requested to designate personnel or staff according to the following distribution. So before passing this on to your troops, is there any assessment that is made of the requests received from the CCI? Answer: we send the texts to our people, and they use the information to determine whether or not they are able to provide the requested troops. Question: as far as you know, did you receive any answers from your various units in relation to this request? Answer: I told you yesterday that we were understaffed, so we were never able to reach even the theoretical staff strength that was expected from by the CCI. Question: my question, however, was to find out from you whether you remember receiving any answers or replies from your units in relation to this request. Answer: yes. I would receive answers by telephone, and I would be told, General, I can provide such and such a number. Now, question: the global total of 2,550 troops is quite high, isn't it? Yesterday, we saw that in November, your total strength was about 1,500 or 15,000. Now, the request was for 2,550. How much of that was satisfied or was met? Answer: I do not remember. Question: as far as you know, was that request met to a large extent? Answer: yes. Question: very well. Then, once you have received the reactions from your subordinate units, did you report accordingly to the CCI? Answer: to the CCI through the General Staff of the Armed Forces. Question: can we go to the last page of this document, please, to wrap up?
En bas de la page, s'il vous plaît.
Please scroll to the bottom of the page, please, and zoom in.
D'accord. Là, on voit l'étampe du commandement supérieur de l'agent.
The stamp there is from the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie. Is that the stamp of the Supreme Commander? Answer: yes, that's the stamp, yes. What about the signature? Well, once again, the Chief of Cabinet could have signed. Question: who was the Chief of Cabinet? Adu?
Your Honors, I'm in a bit of a bind because the next topic will take a little bit of time to expand upon. Is it okay if we stop at this time?
It is absolutely okay. So we stop here and we resume. We have the break now, and we resume at 11:30. Thank you very much.
All rise.